am a true bandilian.
Tell them that we born there.
Release my home, my native land.
Tell them that we born there.
I want you people to understand.
Tell them that we born there.
I am proud to be a Belizean.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there. I am a true bandilian.
Tell them that we born there.
Release my home, my native land.
Tell them that we born there.
I want you people to understand.
Tell them that we born there.
I am proud to be a Belizean.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there. I am a true bandilian.
Tell them that we born there.
Release my home, my native land.
Tell them that we born there.
I want you people to understand.
Tell them that we born there.
I am proud to be a Belizean.
Tell them that.
Hi, good night, and welcome to Naval String Connections. I am your host, ARIA LIGHTFOOT. And tonight we have our guest, Jeremy Enriquez, who currently challenges the government of Belize on constitutional issues with redistricting. My co-host, BILAL Morris, is going to be a little bit late tonight, so he'll be joining us in about half an hour. Jeremy is already here, and we shall hear from him a little bit. This is XTV Creme Radio, and our producer is Nuri Mohammed. I want to just talk a little bit about civics, because it's kind of, there's a void in a lot of people understanding our Constitution, what's the function of government, what's the function of political parties, why they even exist. And because a lot of people are not really exposed to the information, they're left to the political parties to kind of give them the idea of how government works. And what we're seeing now is that we are suffering from serious void in understanding the rules of governance. So I studied political science, also did public administration. And one of the things before Jerry gets on that I do want to talk about is what is a constitution? Because right now you see the opposition party, the United Democratic Party, in a warfare, and a lot of what they're discussing is their internal constitution, their political party constitution. Now that, just to give you an idea, our political party constitution is just a rule book that they're supposed to follow as a political party. Now we have the Belize Constitution. The Belize Constitution tells us that's the rules of how we should run our country of Belize. It tells us how we're supposed to run our elections, how we're supposed to structure our government, who gets power, when elections can be called. The Constitution in law is considered the highest authority in the land. That means everything should follow what the Constitution says. It's the highest power in the land, not the political parties, not the Prime Minister, not the Governor General, not what you're seeing. The Constitution empowers our leaders. So they get their power to be the Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition or to be a judge or to how I handle arresting you. Your Constitution is extremely important, and it's available online. But I can tell you a lot of people have never read it. They've never been exposed to it. And so what happens is we've become a very political state, meaning that the political parties dictate the pace. But a lot of times they're dictating it outside the rules of the country. It's the rules of the country. It's an extremely important document. And I just can't stress to Belizeans that this document, if you do not preserve it, you will lose it. Because what we're seeing in Belize now is that the Constitution also gives politicians the power to change it. But even in changing the Constitution, Belize has signed up for human rights and different international treaties. So because we're signatories of those treaties, there's certain precedents of how we should run a country. So it's not like it's as easy for Belize to come tomorrow and say, I will cancel everybody's rights, because you're still entitled to constitutional and human rights. And your human rights is considered things that nobody can give or take away from you. You're born with it. And part of following the rule of law is to ensure that we respect people's life, liberty, and constitutional rights. I thought this was an important first before I introduce Jerry, because I want people to understand the importance of what he's doing. I want you to understand that this is about the rule of law. And as Belize, where we have people going to jail for something as smoking a stick of weed, theft, because they've broken the rule of law, this is the highest authority rule book that exists for Belizeans. And until we learn to understand that this is greater than politicians, it'll be very difficult for you to grasp what Jerry is doing. Because what he's doing for every single Belizean. And FYI, the term Belizean and how you identify as a Belizean is also written in this Constitution. So your very identity of a Belizean is based on your Constitution. So with that said, welcome, Jerry. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself a little bit. I think you might be on mute.
Thanks very much for having me, Aria, and I really enjoyed your introduction there about the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the country, and most people do not know that it is a law that holds all of us. In fact, that is the law that defines the country Belize and what is expected and mandated for everybody, including those who are leaders in the country. They are not above the law. I like also that you mentioned that about the importance of each citizen being knowledgeable and educated about our Constitution. It is shocking that even in our schools, so many students do not know the Constitution, and therefore they live under the control and sometimes could be manipulated by political and other leaders because they do not know that their rights are supposed to be protected. That is why it is called rights. It is inherent. Nobody can take that away or should even try to. So that's an important introduction that you did and put in context our discussion.
Yeah, and we've seen challenges recently. One of the biggest challenges that went through a very interesting narrative was hair. How people were wearing their hair. And these are things the Constitution gives you. The ability to express yourself freely. And that is what Constitution does. It tells authorities, you cannot take away people's rights, even if nobody agrees with you.
Right.
That's the beauty of a Constitution. It's not there for public agreement. It's there, it's your right. Nobody has to, and I think that is the part where people think it's opinion based. Well, I don't feel this way. It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. It's in the book that says you are entitled to it. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to chat because it is scary, right? You have people that has this budget that can come after you personally. They can come after you through media. And those can be very scary things. Or maybe you might feel vulnerable with your job. So a lot of people decide, listen, I know walk across, no problems, but that are the slippery slope argument. Every
And-
time you have a constitution and you chip away with it, and you don't say nothing because you don't worry about your job and you don't worry about this. So you don't say nothing, then one next one. And you don't say nothing, and one next one, and you don't say nothing. Eventually when it happens, you don't have a constitution again. And then when somebody actually come after you personally, you won't have that right because nobody will say nothing. So I find you to be very brave. And I think more people need to support this cause. So tell us what you're challenging, what in the Constitution, what does the Constitution say, and why are you taking the government of Belize to court?
Thank you. That's a very good question. There's a section in the Constitution, Section 90, that mandates that each and every electoral division should be equal or near as equal as possible in numbers of persons eligible to vote. And so that means that in all 31 electoral divisions in our country, each of them should be at least within the mean. So you take the total number of voters, divide by 31, that would be the ideal. It cannot be absolute though. There are considerations that is provided for in the Constitution for geographical differences. For example, in Toledo, the communities are spread wide apart, so it would be difficult for one area representative to cover that within a day as those in Belize City who could just walk around within a day and check their constituency. But here's the point. What I found disturbing that really prompted me to action is that there is a widening gap in the numbers of electors in the constituencies, especially those outside of Belize City. Stan Creek West, for example, has 10,500. That's the largest, over 10,500 electors, as compared to Mesopotamia, less than 2,500, and Fort George, about 2,500. In fact, 9 of the 10 electoral divisions in Belize City are below what is acceptable for an electoral division. Then you have Belmopan, which is more than 10,000, Belize Rural South, which is also over 10,000. And so you have this vast difference, and increasingly so, and the politicians continue to ignore that, and they continue not just to ignore, to violate the constitutional requirement and call election on their whims and fancy, and just continue like that. Now, I had written before this for a number of years, I started around 2010, to call the public to please to be aware that this is happening. The Belize Peace Movement also took up the matter and even carried it to court. And interestingly, both political parties are fighting to maintain the status quo. And then the people then they continue to be disadvantaged in this vast difference in the size of electoral divisions. Not only the area representatives. For example, the one in Stan Creek West has about 16 communities to represent, including Independence, Placencia, St. Bite, Maya Center, Red Bank, Hopkins, Georgetown, Pomona, Mullins River, all of these communities for one area representative. The disadvantage to the communities then is that they are underserved, they're not able to be adequately represented in the House. And so much of their needs are not met because it's too much for one person. to deal with all of this. So you have all kinds, you see sometimes some of these communities, like recently in Hopkins Village, wondering how decisions are made without their involvement because they're not adequately represented. And even when you have each area representative has a budget granted to them by the government of Belize, and it is divided equally. I'm not sure what the number is, but if you save, for example, let me use a figure like 250,000 would go to a small community like Mesopotamia, and you have that same amount to Stan Creek West or Belmopan, you can see it's vastly distorted and people are not getting the benefit. It is diluted for the larger communities and concentrated in these smaller or overrepresented electoral divisions.
There, I want to actually add another aspect to it.
Yes.
Belmopan, for example, you lived in Belmopan for a while.
Yes.
Once upon a time, Belmopan had no political parties running city council, for example, and we had one area rep, right? Back then, Belmopan was a community of 3,000, maybe that much, a very well monitored, maintained community. Then it started growing very fast.
Right.
So what has happened from Belmopan, as you can see, they take the taxes of the people from the main Belmopan, because now it turns into political strategy and it's no longer representation. So representation means when I go to my representative, he is going to properly represent me as a member of his community. But we become political affiliates. And so, for example, in Belmopan, he's going to look at which areas have more people. And he is going to focus all his energies in areas that he thinks are going to bring in more votes when it comes to election, versus serving the entire community. And they have to do it that way because the communities are very big compared to the smaller communities. And a part of your community gets completely ignored and neglected. So now what you're seeing in Belmopan that I've never seen before is these large gaping potholes. And I use that better than the 250,000. I want to not then give you 250,000. They cannot prioritize everybody. So what they do now, they prioritize areas with pockets of large amount of voters. Right. And they ignore smaller areas where they think they can get away with it. And that becomes our political strategy. Instead of nation building, because what would happen, you evenly divide the representatives. Now everybody has an equal voice. When that area rep walks into the House of Representatives, the scholarships and because remember, every area rep is asking for scholarships, road money, then they ask for medical. So whatever is the need of your community, that is what your area rep should be doing in the House of Representatives. But what are we seeing? We see them going there, and we see certain areas they get developed. And you see it in Belmopan. Suddenly, the outside of Belmopan, they blow up. All kind of development is taking place, while the inside of Belmopan is completely ignored. And now the inside of Belmopan is starting to deteriorate because they don't have enough money to deal with the entire Belmopan. So you could see the smaller ministers, they could be on hand, whichever, when you're sitting in an area, they have a more personal relationship with their area. It's harder for make them lose because they can work. And to me, even politicians should be crying for this change, because the smaller areas are harder for them to lose because they could have more of a personal touch. But the bigger areas, they cannot. So those are become flip divisions because you can't service everybody. Then your resources are limited what they give for your area, and then suddenly now you see your area start to deteriorate because they don't have the sources for give everybody. That is what our Constitution is there for. It is there for equally protect every citizen, so we get the same resources, we get the same treatment, we get the same opportunities, right? But the politicians don't want that. They want you to be red or blue, and the red and blue want to determine whether or not you get anything. And that is dysfunction.
That is an excellent example. And I could also use the example of Toledo East, Punta Gorda, where for a number of years, decades, there was an area representative who actually said that they don't need PG to win. They just need to focus on big communities like Bella Vista and other communities. And in a sense, to hell with PG. And so there's all the streets in PG was so dilapidated, even streets in front of the area representative's house was in a mess. And he didn't have to care about it because he could secure votes otherwise because of the vast distance and imbalance in the constituencies. So we're faced with those kinds of issues on the ground because people are not adequately represented, and that has to change. But the most glaring problem is that politicians of both parties, they know that they are violating the Constitution, but because people do not know and are not aware of the Constitution, they continue to violate it and involve people in unlawful elections, in elections that are unconstitutional, to continue to cement the status quo.
Even worse, I think, is because I was in Belize. I just came back yesterday. I happened to be there during nomination day. My trip was planned before they called election. And one of the things to me is the media is not properly educating Belizeans, because the media should educate Belizeans more versus they treated nomination day, honestly, like they watch the Lakers versus the Celtics to play one game. But the game is about representing you properly and helping you get the resources you need and to build a country, but that's not how it's narrated to the public. It is not narrated in a mature way that we're talking about people's lives, how we deal with our medical situation, how we deal with our ability to build a home, to get access to land. These are the conversations politicians should be having. And what we're doing now, the media should be asking these politicians at every time, hey, your division has significantly less people or significantly more. How do you feel about this type of representation? How do you feel about the violation of the Constitution? And they should be hammering that in. But we know what they hammer in? Tracy and shine.
Yes.
That is what we're consumed with, and to me it's tabloid level type stuff that keeps people engaging at this red and blue and fight. And I don't think election and boundaries, I've said it publicly, they're an inept body that has failed also on their constitutional requirement to run ethical elections in Belize. There's more than one constitutional violation going on, FYI. We have a Guatemalan that's born in Guatemala that doesn't have Belize parentage that they're allowing to run and have been running now for 3 elections. So it's not one constitution, it's many. It's several, but and then it goes into voters being transferred back and forth so that they can fill election boxes. All those things are unconstitutional. It's illegal behavior.
Right.
And paying people for votes.
Yes.
Those are 4 major glaring constitutional issues that affect Belize that every single person is sitting back and saying, oh, yeah, what has happened? Oh, yeah, what has happened? Now we're seeing a grotesque democracy that's forming. It's scary. It's scary because when you have a system that doesn't follow the rule of law, and you are marching and celebrating that we're heading to an election that might give 31 seats to people who don't follow the laws, what are you setting yourself up for? Like, what are you setting your children up for? Jerry, sorry, I feel like I did take over your thing. I have one more thing.
I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. I totally concur. And the fact also is that once the politicians are allowed to break the Constitution, which has happened, which is happening, then they will continue to break every part of the Constitution. And that is also what is happening. They are breaking the law, the supreme law at will, and they're not held accountable. So if a poor man goes to steal a loaf of bread at a store, he's dealt with quickly and sent to jail even for a few months. But here you have these guys breaking the law, not only that, but involving the population in doing so. And not even, as you mentioned, not even the media is calling them to task, to ask the questions, to draw out consistently and persistently that something wrong is happening. So what is also people are involved in this kind of a mass psychology herded into is kind of a carnival kind of way of behavior that politicians feed into, or I could call it also maybe a Santa Claus Christmas parade kind of mentality, a parade that is purported to be celebrating the life of Jesus. But anyway, that's another thing. But I'm saying that politicians are using the masses, in a sense, and their lack of awareness of the Constitution to continue to violate the Constitution. So I decided to take them to task by carrying the matter to the High Court, for the High Court to make a ruling on the constitutionality of this election. Unfortunately, in our first case, the matter was dismissed mainly on procedural matters, procedural and administrative. For example, in the first 10 to 13 pages, the judge was citing things like, well, there was electronic signature. He wasn't sure if it was mine, even though I authorized and affirmed those signatures.
Oh, you're there. I didn't understand that, Jerry. Maybe you could explain it a little bit to me.
Yes.
The idea of fraud, number one, who raised the question of fraud? I'm interested to know if the opposing party, and I want to get to that too.
Yeah.
If the opposing party isn't raising the issue of fraud, why is the judge bringing in evidence that was not presented by the opposition? So in other words, if there was a fair idea of fraud, the people are there. You could ask Jerry, did you really?
I was sitting in court.
That's
and that
what I'm saying.
was not raised.
The idea of fraud for people that are sitting in front of you, I just think, and I know I don't know what that Belize. I know I did America right now, but you did a Belize.
Yeah.
But in Belize, I feel like from a legal body, they have been almost scared. Why take up a profession of law where you're supposed to follow the law, be architects of the law? You're also defenders of the law. Why is the Bar Association and individual attorneys not joining on this cause?
I could say why. I don't know the answer, but I could look at some of the situations that occur. Many of these attorneys are linked to one political party or another, or have received favors from one political party or the other through family connections, and they are sent abroad, many of them on scholarships using the people's money, and they're funded through their training, and they're mainly Belize city-based or in alignment with higher-up politicians
But
in
Jerry,
other parts of the
they're
country.
not a party sending a study that it Belizean people. I just don't understand.
I don't. They do not see it as Belizean
When
people.
have we cut our nationalism
Yeah.
for politics? Because to me, I grew up in an era of George Price and Philip Goldson.
Yeah.
And those two were nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
They were, when you used to pass George Price in the morning, I will always remember it as a child. Hi students, Belize this is your country. You're supposed to keep it clean. You're supposed to protect it. It was such a small but important message, right? This is your country. You're supposed to protect it. When have we moved away from such a simple message? Golson gone to jail for challenging the British Crown, and they even just make one statement.
Yes.
Now on media, one statement, he gone to jail, and he was willing to go to jail because these are people who were, you know, they were lovers of the country of Belize, and they were the architects, and they wanted. When did we shift? When did that shift happen? And it's really a rhetorical question. I'm not looking for an answer per se, but at some point we shifted to a money mentality society. So everything is transactional.
And it has that era of George Price and Philip Goldson we would wish to return, but as you rightly pointed out, greed has taken over the minds of many. Greed and individualism and very narrow view of national development focused mainly on political party. And I was mentioning that yes, even though the people's money was used to train a lot of these attorneys, it was channeled through a political party system, and therefore there is a leverage or a kind of that feel beholden to these political parties. And in fact, these lawyers, these attorneys, many of them are very aligned, whether overtly or covertly, with these political parties, and therefore they will not challenge the system, even though they see much of the wrongs. It was difficult, for example, for the Belize Peace Movement, and even myself, to find an attorney who would stand up and say, listen, and take this matter to court, just because I believe...
Principle, right? On principle, even on
Yes,
principle.
but yeah, but
Because you're thinking, listen, my child, what is my child going to be, exposed to if I do not become an advocate for right over wrong? But even more offensive, Jerry, I think the most offensive part of all this is to pay a private attorney the people's money so that we do not follow the Constitution.
Exactly, to fight the people who want to see the Constitution followed. But then also, what this shows, and it confirms that the top attorneys that the government used are former ministers of this political party government. They also received benefits from to get their scholarship because they were their parents or they were aligned in some way to the political party in power. So government is paying them now the people's money to fight the people.
Jerry, but there's another constitutional part of that.
Yes.
Conflict of interest clause is in the Constitution.
Exactly.
It's a conflict of interest clause that says that you cannot go into these government positions for personal gain, or you cannot bring the government reputation under this ill repute or whatever. I'm not quoting it directly, but it says that, and it applies to every minister, every police. It's a very important clause in our Constitution that have zero teeth. Because you know what? We have our Constitution, but there's nothing to defend that constitution.
Exactly.
And the courts are supposed to be the defender of the rule of law.
Yes.
But now Belize, and I'm going to now go into constitutional law. I did it twice, guys. If anybody, I did constitutional law twice. I had to do it in political science. I did it in public administration also. Belize have what you call a unition of government. They love to argue that Belize have separation of powers. It does not. Once you elect a prime minister, the prime minister then starts appointing all these secondary bodies. And part of the people who get appointed are judges, and many of our judges do not have tenure. And so what happens is the judge might make something controversial, and then the contract come up, suddenly we don't need that judge anymore. That becomes problematic, and I think that is why we lose so many cases at the high level court. Because the kangaroo business that we have going on here doesn't pass the smell test once it jumps out of Belize system, right? That is why we've been losing cases left, right, and center. Because we don't have a country where follow the rule of law.
Right.
And the bar and attorneys in Belize should feel ashamed. They should feel ashamed that once we step out of our system, we can't win with cases then, because we chancy people that use political power to do things, but would violate the Constitution and human rights. And so the minute they jump out of the system that is only Belize controlled, we lose.
Yes. Well, that hit me right in the face in real time when, before the election was called, we sent a letter to the Governor General, we sent a letter to the Attorney General, we sent a letter to the Chair of the Elections and Boundaries Commission, we sent a letter to the Prime Minister to caution them that any election held under the status quo is considered unconstitutional. The Governor General, the Attorney General, the Prime Minister all have the same attorney defending this status quo.
Happened to be a member of the government himself.
Who happened to be a member of government. So if we thought that at least the Governor General will stand up and say, look guys, this is really a matter to take care of, then that didn't happen. If we turn to the Elections and Boundaries Commission, they are also appointed the majority by the Prime Minister and then also by the opposition. And therefore, everywhere we turn, we find that there is collusion to maintain the status quo. So the question I keep asking, who do people turn to when their constitutional rights are consistently violated, and it is done through each election cycle? We turn to the Governor General, ain't happening. Elections and Boundaries Commission, ain't happening. Turn to the courts. Well, this time we're seeing that where do we turn? And then the Bar Association, as you mentioned, nobody cares. It seems the status quo remains. People remain apathetic because
they're cowards. You're driving around, you're making all this money on people who are held in prison, people who are being violated, and you go to court and you win an argument because it's an easy win. But what are you giving back? That's why my fear is, if a country like Guatemala invades Belize, if you can't stand up for simple things like your constitution, how are you going to stand up for Belize, really? But Jerry, I want to give you a story, right?
Right.
Going back to the ICJ, I have to laugh because we did exactly what you did. We in the Belize diaspora wanted to vote in the ICJ, and we went to the Prime Minister at the time, and he told us, okay, if we bring the opposition along, they will agree. So we went out, we brought the opposition along, which is now the government, and they still rejected it. We wrote a letter to the Election and Boundaries, to Immigration Department, We wrote one to the U.S. Embassy because they were funding part of the education or ICJ. We wrote to the British about the fact that they were allowing Guatemalans who are not Belizeans or have Belizean heritage they're giving them Belizean citizenship when our constitution is crystal clear that if you are a citizen from a country that claims Belize, you are not entitled to citizenship. We raise this because this is a serious issue, and I'll tell you why it's serious. Guatemala, one of Guatemala leaders have said in a speech that if they cannot take Belize over by force, they'll do it by accretion, which means they'll just send a lot of Guatemalans to Belize until the country becomes Guatemala. We wrote all these bodies, we don't get one response to this day. Getting a local attorney, Arthur Saldiva did try to help. The cost was oppressive. And at that point I'm saying, so if I'm being violated by the Constitution, there is nothing to raise the quality of the Constitution by the same way how you're supposed to have one defender for murder. We need a public defender for the Constitution, where if the government is violating the law, the citizens should not have to become oppressed by trying to have the government follow the law when the government has access to my tax money.
Exactly.
And then they use my tax money to continue to violate my rights. I mean, there's something grotesque, there's something that's not working, and Belizeans need to wake up because things get worse. When people acquire power, they become abusive with power because they want to hold on to power. Belizeans need to become conscious citizens that are pro the development of Belize versus somebody to tell you, man, for we political party or win, or the nonsense that you see happening in the opposition. Because I have yet to hear them discuss about Belize. It's become a personal vendetta that does not serve the citizens of Belize. What's the purpose of the opposition, Jerry? Why do we need an opposition in Belize?
Well, actually, if there is a strong opposition, then they could also serve as a check and balance to the ruling party. But the way it is played out, even in the House sometimes, the way bills are debated, there's not much analysis, not much. It's always maybe just to oppose sometimes, but we have a really weakened system, and it's getting worse. And if it's not put to a stop, it will continue to deteriorate. When I was considering that I need to do more than writing about this issue, I asked a professor friend of mine from Jamaica, because I realized that within Belize, the attorneys there was no hope. They were hopeless to address these issues. I asked if there was anyone that they could find in Jamaica, any attorney with constitutional law who might want to come to Belize and help us to tackle these issues. Very few attorneys in Belize, I might say, really would like to do that, but there's a cost also. Unfortunately, I was connected to this top attorney from Trinidad, and he was able to come with passion, with deep analysis. He was a former attorney general. He's also versed in constitutional law. And in a sense, after I sat with him and described exactly what is happening, it was the right thing for him to take on this case at the time that we did, and try to do everything that is possible to have an injunction against an election that is going to be unconstitutional.
Where is our advocates? Where is our passion for Belize? Who has passion for Belize that want this country to evolve into a thriving, country where every citizen could say, either Belizean, my country looks out for me, my country got my back, versus either PUP, either UDP, because that's, you know, it's the thing that you are saying is, for example, and I always say this because I made a big stink about it. When I was in Belize City, I was driving between Belize City and Bamapan and it was raining. The road, there's no markings on the road. There's no lines on the road. There's no reflectors. The sides of the roads are very broken, so you don't want to go to the edge because at a certain speed you could spin off, you know, different things. I want to use this as an example of our mentality as citizens of this country. Politicians are spending a grotesque, I'm a word for the day. They're spending an obscene amount of money on nonsense. $6.9 million for acquiring land with no land in that area more than $200,000. This grotesque amount of, an obscene amount of spending of the taxpayers' money. But when you drive the roads, your life is being endangered every time you jump on a road. But more than that, the politician, one life is being endangered. They feel invincible, obviously. Their own children's life is being endangered when their children transverse the road. Their own families. My thing is, if you can't even have interest in your own family, for protect your family, for make sure that the community that you raise your family in, that when they drive their roads are well done. You know why? Because my family, they drive their roads every day. If they even can't take up that passion for themselves, that means that they are very short-sighted. Because I always say, what the point I got a mansion on top of a rat pile, where everybody live poorly, where the streets are poor, where the medical system is poor. What are the point? What is the point of, what are you sharing, what are you telling your children? And the reason I raise this, Jerry, is because one young person, very passionate, we'll have her Monday when I do a special with her. She sounded so dejected when she cannot vote in a, I don't remember that pick stocker, one of the two divisions, where you're supposed to pick up. She was dejected. She said, I will not have the opportunity to exercise my right to vote. Even if it may support the party of the day.
Yes.
Why would the election and boundaries still not conduct an election? Because the bigger picture is these are representatives that were voted for. How can you legitimately call yourself a representative that nobody voted for you?
Right.
Even if they only vote, that even in Venezuela, where they have communism, they have elections where they got one candidate and he win by 90-something%. You know, and these communist countries, even they have elections where they have one candidate. Why would you not allow people to vote? Because you know what, Jerry? They say people could have begun and say, protest vote, this is not a real election, but it would have been recorded as a spoiled vote.
Right.
Why are we not recording what those citizens want in those divisions? How is election and boundaries declaring winners? It's not a game, it's not a competition. It's a constitutional activity. But we treat it like we play basketball and we treat it as winners and losers.
It means that there's so much to do in this country. But you asked a question at the beginning when you asked if there are people passionate for their country and for changes. And I would say that there are, but there is a way in which the political system ridicule and punish persons for even speaking up at their jobs, at government jobs, or against the system. And so it breeds a culture of fear and apathy, so that if you're not just towing the line with whoever the ruling party is, then you're immediately ostracized. I learned that lesson as a 19-year-old when I was in Belize Teachers College, when it was alleged that I led a strike against the 1979 election result. The whole school body of students walked out, or I would say 90% walked out and went to join a demonstration. It was alleged that I caused that to happen because I actually was just announcing that there will be a demonstration tomorrow and those who are interested could go. And when we walked out and I was at the head and everybody, the next day there was an order from the Ministry of Education for my immediate expulsion from Teachers College at 19. It was a kind of a traumatic experience for me and a wake-up call to say, well, I thought I was just exercising a right, and there was an order.
You were exercising a right.
I was, and then there was an order as a result that I would be immediately expelled. Fortunately, the principal of the school at the time pleaded my case, and I was given a chance to finish my studies at Belize Teachers College. But then the punishment didn't end there. When I was supposed to be valedictorian, there was an order that I should not speak at my graduation.
Wow.
And I would decide, well, I will not go if I earned that right to speak. But there was the next follow-up that if I did not show up, then I would not get my diploma. So in every level, I felt I was held.
In good colonial manner.
It was a wake-up call for me at the time, but that did not stop me for joining other social advocacy. And I remember also when I joined the Maya land rights movement struggle at the time on behalf of my friend Julian Cho. There were government jobs that I could not get, so I had to. Those were kinds of the experiences that, in a sense, made me fearless. I know what the repercussions could be, but one has to stand on principles and to ensure that if you want to uplift the standard in this country, each of us could contribute to doing so in whatever way we can. And so that's how I also took up this struggle. When I see over and over, election after election, that these politicians really don't care and they're violating the Constitution at their own whims and get away with it every time. So this time, the court has to look at it. We have filed this at the Court of Appeal, and we will take it to the highest court if necessary, because there's something to learn from this for the nation. There's something has to be pronounced in court about governments that consistently violate their constitution, and the people has nowhere to turn.
And Jerry, the thing is with it, what you're saying is extremely very true. I think that if Belizeans continue to be a talk show society, meaning that something happened, or complain about it, and that's where it dies, we need to elevate ourselves as people, just generally as people, because whenever Belizeans step outside of Belize, they excel.
Yes.
You know, and the thing is with it is, it's almost as if they are driving away Belizeans that are the young people. The brain drain is severe.
Of course.
I saw Mr. Courtney rightly at the time criticize Taiwan for giving all these scholarships, and then these Belizeans are not returning. But the reality is that a lot of people come from poor families and they see it as a way to uplift their family. But the problem is when you're in these systems, and I'm guilty, of course, because I live in the US, The problem with it is that we never use the brain to develop the country of Belize. And so, as much as we are well educated and we have families that we can brag about, the reality is that we're not building the country of Belize. And we can say what we want, but what happens then? The immigrants are going to start coming in, and then it almost feels like a replacement. I think a lot of people are starting to feel it now. They're starting to see it. One of the reasons why I try to tell Belizeans, invest in Belize, do something, put your mark, have some footprint in the country, so that, you know, even from a tax perspective, when you're paying taxes for your land, you have a say
Yes.
in the country, because Belize, the world right now is in a shift, as you can see. And for those of us that are older, that didn't see the struggle with South Africa, that didn't live through the Iran-Iraq wars, and then even our parents who are even older, or grandparents that are still alive, that basically have seen World War II. Some of them have seen the Great Depression. We are in a generation of la la land. You know, I call it that because we haven't really experienced serious struggle that some of our parents and grandparents have seen. We're constantly entertained, and we're entertained with the lowest form of entertainment. We're entertained with fights and quarrel, and now the political parties are starting to reflect the lowest level of policy and politics. Schoolyard, name calling, spitting on each other. And what it is, it entertains our public, but then people talk about Lee Breeze, and I always go back to it. How much GoFundMe and also with the medical system?
Mm-hmm.
That not Lee Breeze, that because we not build one medical system. Do you know how many Belizeans are doctors abroad? We might have 50 high-level doctors and nurses that live abroad, high level.
Yes.
You look for your roads are in deplorable conditions. Not another Lee Breeze, because when you drive the roads, your life is at risk. And that when accidents happen, you have housing. Could you imagine, Jerry, then they tell you that I want to give you a one-bedroom house. Are you supposed to be happy with that? Because at least it's better than we had before. I mean, that can never be the standard for any government.
Yes.
The government sets a standard, and the standard should be we're developing a certain quality of homes with a certain quality of bedrooms. The standard isn't, well, it's better than we may have before.
Right.
Because that's now a very low standard.
Right. And then, yeah,
Sorry.
so because of that, there's no policy that will create the kinds of higher standard that everybody deserves.
Yes.
The measure, okay, you used to live in this. I also want to look at the point where you mentioned the brain drain. A lot of young people who have the experience of returning home, quite enthusiastic, ready to serve their country, want to serve their country, and then get stuck in this political mess within offices, even some companies. We have some old mindset that really stifles people from expressing and contributing to change and development in their various work areas within government or even in some of the companies in Belize. And it is really one of the things that discourage youths from participating and want to go home. So we're stuck in this kind of mind state that needs to change. And I believe one of the things that need to happen even within the school system is for people to develop a deeper level of awareness. There needs to be deeper levels of civic pride, people's awareness of the knowledge of the Constitution. All of these things are not happening in the schools. There's a focus on STEM and all that, which is okay, but if they're not grounded to themselves and the realities of their country, then our education system in itself is failing. We see the way people treat properties, all kinds of garbage in the street. People are not aware of their political processes and systems. That needs to change. And so I even doubt that many teachers are knowledgeable about the Constitution. So how can they teach what they do not know?
But Jared, the attorneys are not knowledgeable of Belize, which is weird, right? Belize go to the Caribbean, go study, but they not study Belize constitutional law. They study constitutional law from a high level, general level, but they don't come home like in America. For practice law, you have to pass one bar exam, and the bar exam have to be specific to the state where you practice law.
Right.
Because when you go to law school, you get one high level of politics, law, but when you
make it applicable.
State, it has to be applicable. So maybe we need one bar maybe we need one bar exam so that attorneys are knowledgeable specifically about Belize law versus one higher level macro type study system. And maybe it needs to be narrowed into Belize, because there is honestly, there's a big problem, but I don't think it's that big. We like to say the problem bigger, but I don't really. We have 400,000 people.
Right.
And when we ready for court law and procedures, we know exactly how I went to court law and procedures. And we know exactly when to turn a blind eye to law and procedures.
And when they're ready to pass bills in the House, they could run that through also. And
one day.
Yes, and so how come we cannot yet get this constitutional matter with electoral redistricting all done within the 5 years that they had? I say that there was absolutely no interest or intent. And even when the Prime Minister admitted that he was thinking about March to have elections, and he was thinking about that since December, it totally did not include in his mind that we need to do the redistricting before elections. It was not in their interest at all. Otherwise, that would have been done. We have until November for elections, and we could go an extra 3 months if possible.
But you know what I think it is?
What's that?
You know what I think it is?
Tell me.
How dare you?
Yes.
That's the mentality of our leaders. How dare you tell me what I could do? I that the boss. They don't realize they're the servants.
Exactly. We are hiring
they think they're the boss.
Yes, yes.
So on election, they have to go beg people, and they look humble, and suddenly they become servants.
Yeah.
Just for the election period.
And I think some of them think like they are kings, more than the people.
You know what? I could tell you what I said. Who the Jerry Enriquez, and I'm pretending right now I am the senator, the head attorney / senator.
Yeah.
Who does Jerry Enriquez think he is?
Right.
For tell we were for do. And so they instantly take on an adversarial approach
Exactly.
to governance versus Jerry, make we come in here and say how you can assist us to push this matter through. Because to me, collaborative government and collaboration with different groups, that the best way for the governance.
Yes.
But because we have loan lot of attorneys involved in our governments, all we want to fight. We want to fight 24/7. That all we do as Belizeans, we fight and call each other name, and this school year type mentality.
In fact,
and now here Jerry comes with the law. Jerry, you not give we one penny. You not sponsor for we election.
yeah.
You don't know for we donor. You that just want a simple Belizean when I mean nothing to me.
Right.
But then I understand that you are the boss.
In
Belizeans
fact,
don't understand them are the boss.
yes,
That-
in fact, the Prime Minister said it himself when he was asking one of the news station about the Belize Peace Movement case for the same redistricting, redivisioning. The Prime Minister said that he has to seek the top lawyers because they are attacking. Just his exact words that they are attacking, and so he has to go on the defense. It blew my mind for him to see that calling him to follow the Constitution is an attack on him, and so
And that's how we're
what kind of
programmed.
mindset?
We're programmed for this constant waste of time fighting.
Yes,
But to me, I feel like a politician is more effective when they bring in the enemies to the table. And I don't mean enemies as in you're the real enemies,
right.
but people who oppose him. And there's a study of this politician, and I'll call his name, in the United States. They said he was extremely effective his popularity was always high. Because he always surrounded himself with different people. He not always was yes man wronger.
Yes,
He used to have the person where the wronger would tell her where you are here. And then he got the other person will come and tell her what that it counter to that.
yes,
And by allowing all these different voices in your surrounding, he can then make these great decisions and speeches. And so whenever he made a speech, he always seemed to be in tune with his population because he was willing to, like I always tell people, only that believes in a just one, 40 something year history, we have seen ridiculously big swings in election.
mm-hmm.
Why is that? The reason in a this short time is because the minute they get in, they don't want to hear nothing what anybody have to say that does not fall within the yes man marching group, right? And the yes man marching group create almost like one bubble around the leader.
Right.
Because they don't want the leader be exposed for their influence. No boss, that one they like me, no boss, he blah, blah. And that they insulate themselves from their people. And so when they go back 5 years later, the people vex because I try to tell you what it bother me long time. But every time I try to tell you, slam me or you criticize me, and so what happened? The people say, you know what? I know I say nothing, man. I want to just chill.
Yeah.
Because 5 years y'all come back. And now we got to swing. Because when you were you insulated yourself from the populace, right? Because you're the boss now.
Yes.
But do we think beyond elections? My problem is we don't think beyond elections. We don't think beyond the next 5 years. Oh, we got to win. And the next, like, I listened to the cops talk about winning 31 seats. Does PUP realize if they win 31 seats, they will get one uprising within their own party? He will make 31 people cabinet ministers? The worst thing he could wish for that for win 31 seats.
Yes.
That's the worst thing. That's like the worst political strategy. I know it sounds good,
that could lead to a serious crisis too, you know.
but it will.
Yeah, definitely.
It absolutely will, because when you have the 31 people, then you have one completely imbalanced House of Representative and Senate. And no, nobody want to raise alarms about the laws that are being passed.
Right.
Nobody want to tell you, listen, you may know that then they do this part of the law. Nobody will be there to explain it. But worse than that, people know the Prime Minister to look for retire.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the ones then where they come with daggers, where the same fight might probably not be public, but the same fight is looking to brew next.
And it could be more intense because there's no opposition to to divert.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's going to be another crisis. So
And if we don't get it together, this is why they say, like, I feel like the media job is to educate people beyond the nonsense, beyond and you may know this one said this and this one said this, and we need for, okay, this are the news, this is what happened, now let's add the law to it, and this is what ought to happen.
right.
So that people can always see next to the nonsense, really this is what the law is saying, and this is why the media themselves need to become versed in constitutional law. And I do want to give a heads up to Rene Villanueva. I feel like he's the most diplomatic corrector of all people. The CABSET said something that even I knew was not 100%. The Prime Minister serves at the pleasure of the elected members of the House.
Yes.
The CABSET said something to the effect, and I'm not quoting him directly, but he said something to the effect that, no, that the leader, that he's not the leader of the party, and he serve. So, Rene Villanueva basically said, oh, okay, but he called right back again, I read, he got right into the Constitution, and he read it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I said that is because a lot of them ministers don't know the Constitution themselves.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them don't know that they like say, oh, we serve at the Prime Minister's pleasure. They don't realize that the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister at their pleasure.
Right.
And that switches the balance a little bit when you understand the Constitution for what it is. But if you have a bunch of numbskulls, and I don't mean any specific party, but when you run one party with a bunch of numbskulls, they don't know the rules, they could tell you anything, and then you just say, yeah.
Yes.
Make we go march, yes, but they don't even realize that if they win 31 seats, they could vote out Johnny as Prime Minister.
Of course.
And they could pick for their own Prime Minister, but I'm just letting y'all know that's possible. you know?
One of the bottom line in all of this, all of these things that we're seeing is we need to find a way for people to start to delve deeply into the Constitution and know the Constitution, and perhaps the media houses could have programs regularly for people to know
one part a week.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then schools could also do that as part of the must have some kind of civic training and history of Belize. All of these things are important. Otherwise, we will have a population doing the same old, and nothing is going to change. And the politicians will continue to prey on that for their own benefit. So we need to find ways for deep change and transformation, and that will start with education, public education, and also in schools for people to know what the Constitution is. That is a huge gap that is missing. But also, we need to start to use the courts in whatever way we can. Perhaps even if we don't have our local attorneys supporting these causes, we will have to tend to look outside for those who have common interests to continue to fight our case. So that's the road that I have taken, and we'll see what results will happen from there.
So Verlene and I, we started the Belize Civic Fellowship Program. People can go to civicfellowsbz.com, Civic Fellows with an S, Civic with no S. So civicfellowsbz.com. We had Belize politicians and we had Judge Moore that outlined the Constitution and different aspects of civics. We discussed the Maya land rights during the stuff. We picked different topics, and it's still online. We're going to make the website a little prettier, but if you go in there, Belize politicians and attorneys are in there telling you what the right and wrong is, including some that are elected right now. So I think you're absolutely right. We tried several times to try to get funding, but that CARSA funding, I mean, like, you have to be one expert in writing up grants. But we really wanted to do exactly what you said. Create short videos, small books, like kid-friendly reader books, so that we can teach about who our leaders were. And it would have been copying. So in America, there's a series where the book is called I Am Martin Luther King. It's written at the first grade level, right? So we would have done I Am George Price, I Am Antonio Sabranis. Start stories so that, you know, in America, one thing with Americans, from the time they start school, they start with what they write. That's why a lot of time kids will want to tell about they write a free speech when they're teenagers, because it's pounded into their head who their first president.
Yes.
Who is Martin Luther King? Who are these people that form your society? And they teach them why it is important to continue teaching this and fighting. You notice Americans have no problems going out with a placket, no matter who the president, then going out to protest.
Yes.
Because it is taught that for democracy to function, the citizens have to function within the democracy. They're not only the opposition, they're not only the government. You, the citizen, have to be vigilant, so that when they come knock on your door, you're supposed to say, what are you going to redistricting? I don't know a division where you don't even show up at my house unless the election time. I can't even say or do anything because my division too big. When I want to get one representative, we could look out for my interests. Every time you live the Belmopan, if you live the Griga or down south, PG, Toledo, that when you're supposed to ask them when they come knock at your door. When they come from Belmopan Central, and you have to bump up your street for reach your house for ask for your vote, you should have said to them, listen, you never feel all the potholes when you may come see me? Why don't I fix that? When I get one representative who care about the environment where I live in, that what I need for pause to them.
Of course. I also think that the initiatives that you did with the civic fellows, that should be funded by the state, the Ministry of Education, to encourage these kinds of awareness and knowledge within the schools. So it shouldn't be that you have to struggle to find the funding for that. That could be done along with the Ministry of Education if they were interested in having the population learn the Constitution.
And one other thing, small thing. You know how much every Constitution costs?
Tell me.
$25. That is oppressively high for
That's distributed freely in everywhere.
Thank you. So that, one of the things we were advocating for.
Yeah.
The other way you could access our Constitution right now, the Angelo's Press or one of them places, and that $25 for print 20, and it's online. You could download it online. But how many people of the what percentage of the population are online?
Right.
So you they have a major sector. Imagine they do a constitutional. They wanted to do a review of our Constitution. When the average citizen can't even get access. When the average citizen, they make $200 a week.
Yes.
$25 is an oppressive cost for our Constitution. So that is what the government should prioritize. Instead of the hand people manifesto when they know how to follow, they need to go print constitutions and go hand it to the citizens of Belize.
And it
You
should be
know?
like a textbook in school also.
When I became a U.S. citizen, you know what they had me in my hand? Well, well, U.S. Constitution.
Then, yeah.
You had to study the Constitution for even pass the exam.
Mhm.
Why Belizeans, and I told you this offline, when we did our civic fellowship, we had like 50 kids that participated, young adults and school-age kids. Of that entire 50 people that have mostly been high school and older kids, only about 2 or 3 of them said that they've ever read the Constitution of Belize.
Wow.
So when you, and this is what I try to do these little education tidbits on that election page. Here's the issue. When you tell people this, that you're right, they don't know what the heck you talk about, Jerry. Then they see you. The first thing they say, what Jerry to get out of this? Who they pay Jerry for do this? And I they're like, under the word about Jerry, who that for under money then they use for
Yeah.
fight this, you know? But explain to the public why you care. Why do you care? Why you not just like, you know what, Jerry? I could do my own thing on the side. I quite fine, I believe. I know they suffer. I don't know someone of the Belizean there where then they put one thumb pan and I need for depend on government for everything. Why do you care, Jerry?
I grew up in a community in PG where I've seen a lot of unexperienced, a lot of socioeconomic challenges, and every time I visit PG, I see the suffering and neglect of the town because it is not properly represented in the electoral system, in the governance system. I see that up front. I see it in the southern districts. I see the neglect. I see people crying for leadership, wanting to see change. And over, there are politicians that really cannot do it because it's too large, or many do not care. And so in the southern districts, it stares us in the face that they're bypassed in many key issues where these districts could be far more developed. For example, even in the Stan Creek district, I work as a consultant also, and a few years ago, I was hired as a consultant by the government of Belize for a World Bank project. I went to assess. Here's the question I went to find answers for at the time. The Stan Creek district had the highest number of industries of all districts in Belize. They had the shrimp farm, they had tourism, there is citrus, there is banana. So high levels of production, but it was one of the poorest districts in all of the country. So you have all this money circulating, but the people, the local people, are not benefiting from that investment. And when I traveled these districts, these communities, I spoke with the people, I could see their pain, their wanting to be heard. And so over time, I used to write regularly in the mandala about various development issues. And over time, I decided that I must do more than just writing and talking about it. And that is why I decided to jump in and to do what I can for this system to change. It is unjust. It is causing, those people in Belize City might not feel it or care about it because they are smaller electoral divisions. And those area representatives and top-heavy politicians in Belize City might not have that broader perspective of the country. And that is why they continue to insist on the status quo. I could have lived abroad. I had opportunities to move out, but I live in this country and I feel those pains as I travel and have deep compassion for people. And so that is why I decide, on principle, I will make a stand as far as I could.
I mean, I think it's extremely important that as a nation, as citizens of Belize, we need to call upon our ancestors like George Price, Philip Golson, Antonio Sabaranis, and all the other Belizeans who face even more dire environments than this, because the British colony was not an easy entity to go up against.
Yeah.
And whether or not you lean red or blue or whatever, what we as citizens of Belize need to know our laws. You know, we need to know why it matters and what is this person doing and why is it doing and what law is he referring to. We have to become a questioning society versus, oh, you know, I really like the politician, me and granny, blah, blah. I know, like, I annoyed at that narrative because you're not thinking about your future, you're thinking about the past. What is Belize shaping out to become? Every citizen, especially if you're a business person, you should care, because I know cases where they threaten businesses, they threaten the employees of those businesses if anybody go out of line. What are you setting yourself up for by refusing to speak up? By refusing to, you don't even have to speak up. You could support Jerry. He's doing a GoFundMe to help the
cost for the case, yes.
Back in the day, Belizeans used to do bake sales for help Mr. Golson with his legal costs. People were invested in making sure that people follow our laws and respect us as individuals. But Jerry, I really don't think we believe in equal rights. We believe in a privilege. We don't want equal rights. We don't want the Lehman on the street suddenly. I'm telling you that the attitude of who do you think you are? In a privileged society, how dare you question my authority when your authority comes from the same people and the Constitution? That's who give you your authority, the people and the Constitution.
Of course.
That's it. And if these politicians would change their mentality, they will start to serve the interests of the people.
And they must see that the Constitution is the supreme law. It is this. No politician is greater than the Constitution. In fact, they are elected to office to uphold, and they swear on the Bible to uphold the Constitution, to abide by the Constitution. I said in previous shows that they treat the swearing on the oath as if they're putting their hand on a Nancy storybook.
I'm surprised it doesn't burn their hand as they're putting it on there.
Yeah, they just they're not, so just to show that they continue to violate the Constitution and that they feel okay with it.
But my thing is they keep quoting their part of the Constitution.
Yes,
that is a source of authority.
Exactly.
Belize Constitution, that's a source of authority. And they need orientation themselves.
Yes, yes. So conveniently, they could quote their party's constitution, but violate Belize's constitution, which is far greater than the party's constitution.
It's greater than every law. Every law comes from the Constitution. If government write one law tomorrow and say, I could just come in and take over your house if I want, take your land away, there's a Constitution that says they cannot without reasonable compensation.
There can be no law that violates the Constitution. No law. Every law must be in compliance with the supreme law.
Yes, yes. So, Jerry, we're at the end. It was a great show because I think it's a very important conversation, even for us in the diaspora, because we're Belizeans. And under the Constitution, we have equal rights under the Constitution as Belizean citizens. And so these conversations are extremely important for people to hear, to understand, to appreciate what Jerry is doing. Jerry is protecting your rights even though you don't know that yet.
The struggle goes on.
Right, in protecting your children's rights, because what they're doing, sitting politicians, are so short-sighted. They don't realize they might be opposition 5 years from today. No, they have set the precedence for bad behavior. And if we don't fix it, bad behavior gets worse, right? Somebody start to drink, and then they start to get drunk, then they start to develop alcoholic problems, and then suddenly then they lose their house, suddenly then they lose their mind. It deteriorates, it don't get better. That's what happen when you broke the law or when you don't follow rules. The rules start here, you'll find one excuse for ignore the law, then you'll find one next excuse, suddenly the law no exists no more. Do not do that to our constitution of Belize. That constitution will make we Belizeans. That constitution define what part for we land there. That constitution tell their politicians how they're supposed to run this country. That constitution give you your right for own land. And it give you the right so that police car can run up by you and do things to you, and even for protect your life. And that's why everything in our constitution matters. And following the laws matter. The Prime Minister is not greater than the Constitution. The Prime Minister derives his power from the Constitution. Politicians derive their power from the Constitution. That's why it's important to protect it.
And
With that said, please have your last word.
And the people must be guardians of the Constitution, but you cannot be guardians if you do not know it. So I appeal to everyone to please find a way to study and learn the supreme law of the country. If you don't, then you will have politicians continuing to break the law. And as it is, those who suffer for breaking the law are usually the poor, while these guys keep getting away over and over. So we must find a way to be guardians of the Constitution and challenge it as much as possible to make sure that the politicians and everyone comply with it. And on that note, thank you very much for having me, Aria. It was a really good conversation, and it's a conversation that should continue. It's that hopefully it continues among the citizens and that they continue to take this very seriously to find ways to transform this beautiful country that we have.
I agree. Thank you so much. It was a great educational show. Let's hope the courts see the importance of this, creating a precedent for the rest of the Caribbean so that we all uphold our laws. This is how we build a country of Belize. We don't build it through political parties. We build it through the rule of law and doing what's the right thing to do. Not for go wave and go dance, and that not build your country. Follow the laws. Become active, intelligent, and informed citizens of this country. And with that, I always want to thank XTV and Creme Radio for giving us this platform so that we can have these discussions about very important issues that affect Belizeans. I'll also like to thank Harlan and Chrissy. They're on the back end. We don't see them, but he is the one that helps us make this show happen. I want to thank the people who reach out, who listen, and give me feedback. Bilal couldn't make it tonight, but I think it was a very important show, and I think we need to continue having these discussions. I implore every teacher, go online. The OAS have a copy of the Belize Constitution. It's in a PDF format. Download it. Look for, what are the section, Jerry, 90?
Section 90, yes.
Look to section 90 of the Constitution, read it, say that Jerry not the bull owner, that there actually is something in there where say that they're supposed to follow that law. Then go all the way to the back and look for the number X, or the letter, the Roman numeral X. You'll find that there's a section that tells you conflict of interest and how much conflict of interest they're violating today that needs to be corrected. And I implore the public service to help educate the public. I implore the social communities that do not fall under political parties, partners, or educate the public. Teachers, talk to the students, young UB students. You're not supposed to know what the rules on the country, or they take over soon. So that's my tidbit for today. And thank you again. Please visit the Civic Fellowship group also, www.civicfellowsbz.com. There are attorneys there that's explaining this to you from Belize. Once again, thank you, and we shall see you next week.
Thank you, Aria.
I am a true born Belizean.
Tell them that we born there.
Belize my home, my native land.
Tell them that we born there.
I want you people to understand.
Tell them that we born there.
I am proud to be a Belizean.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there.
Tell them that we born there.
You're born there, you're born there. I am a true born Belizean.
Tell them that we born there.
Belize my home, my native land.